In this video, I want to real quickly talk about room mics. You see, room mics are an essential tool for two places. One, for in-ear mixes, and two, for broadcast mixes. So let's first talk about room mics and how they should be used and considered in your space. So room mics can really be any kind of microphone you have. There are microphones that are better for room miking than others, and we'll talk about those in just a moment. But in general, any mic will do. You can use 57s if that's all you've got and just place them in a spot that makes sense. And usually those spots are going to be either at front of house to kind of capture the room from there. You can put them on the edges of your stage and just kind of pick up what's happening in front of the room. You can hang them from the ceiling and just kind of point them down and get them just to cover wherever you can. The idea is that you're capturing what's happening in the room. Here at my church, we use these guys up here, which are going to be some Audio-Technica 853 mics. These are basically choir mics, if you will. So they're condensers, and they capture just kind of generally what's happening in that area. I have two of them here, one on each side of the room, and they just kind of had a little bit of the PA bleeding into them, but mostly it's just what's happening around that space. So when people are singing, when they're clapping, we can hear that in our in-ears and on our broadcast because it's being captured by that. Now, processing them is going to take a little bit of work to get them to sound good. Usually it's a lot of low cutting. It's a lot of high and mid range, just kind of ducking just to kind of cut down the brightness of them. But the idea is that you're using it to capture and add back into both your in-ear mixes and your broadcast mix a little bit of the liveliness of things, the natural room reverb, if you will. So in-ear mixing, I like to use these as something that you just kind of lift a little bit into your mix just to kind of help give this a sense of natural space. If everyone's wearing in-ears, they usually feel isolated from what's happening in the room. Room mics are the best way to add that back in without having to have your artist take their ears out, which could then cause some other issues. By adding room mics in, they have control and good quality sound of what's happening in the room. That's also not going to hurt their ears. And they can choose how much or how little they want. So if it's a drummer, they tend to not want a ton because if someone's off rhythm clapping in the front row in front of the microphone, they don't have to worry about them trying to get off the tempo with that. Versus vocalists who want to hear what's happening in the room and they want to be able to respond to what's happening, they have that in their ears cranked so they can hear that naturalness of the room and hear what's happening. Now, in broadcast, you're usually just going to add this in as like almost another layer of reverb, if you will, just to kind of glue things together, make them feel a bit more like you're actually in the space and less like you're just watching an album recording where there's no reverb whatsoever in the space. It's just kind of creating that liveliness, almost as if you're in the room with them. And two, it's also really great for capturing audience response, especially when like there's talking happening, say the pastor tells a joke or something and you want to hear the room respond to it. This is when you can have that microphone kind of come up a little bit to hear it and then pull it back down. So it's not like you hear everyone coughing, texting on their phone or whatever. The room mic is a really essential tool for getting your mixes to sound great for both your in-ears and for your broadcast. So I highly recommend trying out some. Now, the last thing I'll share with you is this, is that if you're interested in getting some of the best room mics you can, the two best options you have are really nice large condenser microphones, which I've linked below. And you can also look at getting shotgun microphones. Shotgun microphones are absolutely perfect for this role because you can hide them underneath your PA up above in the ceiling and aim them directly at the people you want to capture in the room. So you can set up to just capture the first few rows or the backs of the room or whatever. And it's only going to focus on that. It's not going to pick up nearly as much of the room's reverb and such, so that way you can actually kind of control that. It also doesn't pick up nearly as much of, say, the band or the PA. It's just focused on just audience. And the more of these microphones you have, the more you can, level them out. You can pan them around to give this big wide space feel, and you can have more control to have a really, really great mix. So room mics, give them a try.